Last time on the Weird Wild West, our heroes gathered in the newly founded Rocktown, Colorado, learned of strange bear attacks on caravans, and set out to the Mountain of the Sun to investigate. On the way, Bear uncovered distinctive human footprints sporting long, curved claws. As our heroes approach the obsidian black cliffs on the tallest mountain in the eastern Rockies, they see a thin pillar of smoke from a campfire. Upon approach, they find 12 male Native Americans cooking a feast on an open flame. Through hand gestures and smiles, the braves invite them to the feast, and they join happily, though communication was very limited. As evening began to cast long shadows on the dark mountain, Elsie notes movement on her treasured parchment. Given to Elsie by her mentor the last time they ever spoke, the parchment looks like a dirty rag to everyone else. To her eyes, it is a vague map that tracks the relative location of creatures that traverse in realms beyond.
Guys? Hey guys? Something big is coming from the woods. I'd hide if I were you.
As the others duck into tents, Joseph steps into the open, while 2 male silver-backed grizzlies amble into the camp, taking positions on either side of Joseph. Just behind them was a strange creature, nearly 8 feet tall and covered in oily fur. The creature stood upright on 2 legs, and its head was elongated in a toothy jaw. Other than its posture and coloring, it had many characteristics of a bear. As the creature stepped through a shadow, it emerged, something entirely different. An old Ute woman with deep wrinkles in her aged skin steps from the shadows and eyes Joseph warily. Her English is broken and echoes with a haunting rhythm.
Hello there. Thank you for sharing your food. We'd like to ask some questions about the nearby mining camp.
Outsiders. Dig. Explode. Destroy.
No, we aren't miners. We're here to help solve this dispute.
You ate ritual feast. You are sacrifice.
I believe we can help each other.
That's when Joseph critical failed his persuasion check. The chiefess's eyes turned to the long dagger at Joseph's waist, a traditional Irish dirk given to him by his grandfather years ago. Joseph knew that she sensed the threat that the weapon posed to her. In the blink of an eye, she transformed into a hybrid beast of teeth and fur. With a roar, the rippling, silver-backed grizzlies fell upon Joseph, shredding his flesh, bringing him to his knees. The natives surrounded and attacked Milo and Bonton, perforating them with arrows and pinning them to the ground in a twisted pile of flesh. Unable to stand from their gruesome injuries, Milo and Bonton sit back to back on the ground, fending off native after native, slowly building a crimson wall of fallen foes. Bonton's daggers dance in a display of blood, while Milo's Colt Dragoon rings out again and again.
Monsieur Milo, as we die here today, I want you to know that I have never fought together with such a man of elegance and fine taste.
Do not give up hope, Bonton. We've already killed 6, only half remain.
We only 6 men remain, but perhaps you have not noticed the huge carnivores and the shapeshifter.
A glorious death indeed.
In the chaos, Elsie notes another creature on her map, further away, near a steep cliff in the shadows. She rushes over to see a white-haired woman limping through the darkness. Bear levels his .50 caliber sniper rifle and puts an enormous hole in the mysterious figure, sending it tumbling off of the cliff.
These monsters may be killing my friends, but at least that old lady won't escape.
Wounded and gasping for breath, Joseph managed to damage the chiefess with his holy dagger, singeing her with divine power and sending her leaping off the cliff after the woman that Bear had shot. Elsie uses her whip to slap one of the grizzlies across the eyes, blinding and crippling the creature. Then, in a fit of rage, she sends the creature into a daze with a sudden upcut. Seeing his friends crippled and beset by enemies, a tickling rage grows inside of Bear. At first, his eyes transform into a luminous red. Then his face begins to morph into an abomination of beak and feathers. The control and sentience of humanity fades as bloodlust drives him to leap upon one of the bears and tear it apart with his face. The others look on in horror, but say nothing. And the display of carnage sends the other natives running for the safety of the night. As things quiet down, Bear returns to his normal self, bleeding out on the ground, gasping for their lives. Our heroes find comfort in a little gallows humor.
Oh, excellent work with the negotiations, Joseph.
Perhaps a prettier face would have gotten a better reaction, no?
If you have the courage to step forward and act like a hero, I would welcome you aside in negotiations.
I don't think Bonton's ever gonna be a hero.
Oh no, heroes die a little too quickly for my taste.
Behind their carefree facade, our heroes are torn, mangled. Joseph, Bonton, and Milo are immobilized by injury. Bear and Elsie work to bandage their wounds before crafting a makeshift sled to drag the injured off the mountain. As they limp back towards Rocktown, the night is cold, and the journey a waking nightmare. Arriving in Rocktown, they split up, some heading to the tavern, others camping outside. That's when the dreams begin. The delirium of bloodlust and forced marching for almost 24 hours has driven each of them to the brink. Falling asleep is no challenge, but the sleep is fitful. Bear Jackson, soaked with blood through all layers of clothing, shaken to your core after succumbing to an irresistible bloodlust. You bed down next to Joseph in the forest just outside Rocktown. Upon laying down, you are asleep in seconds. Your eyes open in a dark alley. The haze of alcohol clouds your vision on a rainy night in the streets of Philadelphia, where you lived as a young man. You recognize this alley between the Banks Theater and a nameless dive bar where you spent countless evenings drinking and telling tall tales. You recognize the two hulking figures in front of you, a pair of lowlifes to whom you lost a game of chance. They have caught up with you, late at night as you stumble home in the drizzling rain. The first punch twists your head with a violent snap, opening a cut above your left eye. Blood begins to ooze across your face with a sickening warmth. As you turn to run, the other thug cuts you off, sealing you in the dark alley. And the drunken haze fades as a violent clarity focuses you with a haunting sense of pleasure. Your head whips forward, striking your attacker with a power that drives the large man backwards, slamming him into a metal dumpster and sending him sprawling into a puddle of muck. The second man swings a metal bat at your side, but your arm raises and the rain drips off oily fingers as claws catch the bat mid-strike. The man's eyes widen with stunned fear as he screams and drops the bat. A roar erupts from your chest as you pounce upon the fleeing man. His flesh tears easily and the warmth of sanguine gore covers your face. Strangely, the blood lacks color, and your mouth tastes dry and chalky. You begin to cough as a cloud of gray dust fills your nose and eye. You wake, breathing heavily and sweating through your ruined clothes. After watching Bear fall asleep, mumbling to himself in fits and starts, Joseph McLaren lies down beside his new friend, and exhaustion overtakes him. He opens his eyes to rolling green Irish hills. Joseph is 8 years old in Grandpa Dearman's cherry orchard. Autumn has swept through the land with a rich beauty, and the sweet smell of ripe cherries floats on the breeze. A gentle mist obscures the rolling green hills that surround this estate. As Baron of this region, Your grandfather enjoys the protection of the English crown, and this estate has been in your family since before memory. Your grandfather flashes a warm smile as he sweeps you into his arms and sits you on his knee beneath a cherry tree.
Joseph, I have a story to tell you. It is a story of darkness and lurking evil. You must know these things, because knowledge is the foundation of courage, and you will need courage to continue our fight.
He opens his palm to reveal a thick branch of cherries, recently picked from a tree, and as Joseph settles in to enjoy the sweet fruits, grandfather continues.
Our family has always protected these lands, and wiser kings have honored us for our service. Now the crown has grown complacent and does not respect the old ways. Beyond the orchards, beyond the cities, in the dark wilds, monsters lurk. Even within our cities, within our families, there are those who conceal curses. Uncontrollable evil drives men to lust for blood and to tear their own kin limb from limb for an unholy delight. One day you will face these demons, and you must remember this place, this day, this moment, for it is our memories of light that bring us hope in the darkest hour.
He reaches to his belt and unstraps a cloth wrapped around a long object. Slowly, he unfolds the cloth and reveals a silver dirk engraved with the crest you have seen above the mantle on the fireplace, the crest of your noble family. The dirk is nearly half as long as you are tall, and you struggle to lift it, but grandfather's hand gently steadies you.
This is more than silver, my boy. It is imbued with an ancient power from the realms beyond. It strikes fear into the heart of monsters, and the most powerful among them will know that you come for them.
As you look down proudly at the magnificent weapon in your hands, you blink in confusion as the weapon begins to disintegrate, crumbling into a gray powder as your stomach wrenches in fear. You wake up suddenly and grasp instinctively for the dirk. It is there, safe and sound, but the crumbling image replays, imprinting itself forever upon your mind and shaking your confidence to the core. Elsie Ward. The trauma of the battle with the natives largely passed you by as you stayed focused on your map and away from the worst, the gore. Disconnected from the impact, you fall asleep in normal fashion. You see yourself at the house of Greta Beard in Marietta, Ohio, a quiet town where you grew up. It is evening and the room is darkening as the sun sets. Greta is an attractive middle-aged woman who lives on the poorer side of town with her friend, Frances. Folks in town whisper about Greta and Frances, muttering about indecency and witchcraft. You and Greta are great friends, and Greta has taught you much about the unseen world. Your knowledge of the beyond stems largely from the ancient books in her basement that you have pored over day after day. Greta enters the rundown living room with a cup of tea and smiles. "How are you today, dearie?" As you open your mouth to respond, you hear a loud knock at the door.
Let us in, witches. Me and the boys gonna learn you what you're missing.
Greta stands up sharply, dropping her tea with a clatter to the floor. Frances, a tall woman with blonde hair, runs into the room, pulling an old hunting rifle down from over the fireplace, and begins stuffing a ball and powder into the muzzle with a determined look. You hear breaking glass as the window beside the back door shatters and you hear several men cheer with deep-throated roars.
Yeah, get 'em. Nowhere to run, witches.
Gonna have us some fun tonight. Greta grabs your arm, drags you towards a trap door to the basement. She rips open the door, pushes you inside. As you look up at her from the stairs, you attempt to protest, but Greta holds up her hand and your throat freezes in silence. Then her hand moves towards you, and you are flying backwards without so much as a touch. You tumble to the floor in a heap as the trap door shuts soundlessly. There are sounds of heavy footfalls above you. The map you have spent so much time researching is on the desk beside you. In a flash, you find yourself running down an alley that leads to the train tracks, and down the train tracks to your house on the nicer side of town. As you run, you hear a gunshot. That was the last time you ever saw Greta. You went to her house the next day to check on her, but there was blood on the floor, and she was nowhere to be found. As you leave her house the next day, you turn and look sadly, only to see the frame begin to crumble, the roof sag and then fall, and the entire structure collapse into a pile of dust. Rene Bontemps, you were the worst injured in the fight against the natives. You blacked out on the journey back. Some time later, the invigorating smell of salt and brine sweeps over your nostrils with an intoxicating rush of warm wind. Your hand is wrapped in a thick rope, dangling from the fore spritsail of your ship as you swing with a flourish across a thin gap of sparkling blue Caribbean sea. Your prize, a medium merchant vessel with no cannons, is laboring against the wind in a futile attempt to escape. You land deftly on the deck of the merchant vessel and laugh, ha-ha, as you stab a crewman clumsily wielding a makeshift club. The owner of the vessel, dressed in a rich velvet cloak, rushes to the top deck and drops to his knees in front of you. "Please, sir, let me go. The ship is yours." The thrill of victory washes over you, but only for an instant. For as you look up, you see a pillar of smoke billowing up from a steam-powered Spanish galleon flying the colors of the Spanish crown. The gleaming two-decker has more than 100 guns, far more than you have ever seen. You've heard tales of the new ship of Vice Admiral Juan Bautista Topete, the man who has been hunting you, your ship, and your captain for the better part of a year. They must have been hiding in the bay upwind of here. This was a trap. You sound the alarm and your mates scramble for your ship, but it is too late. The galleon has too much speed, and the guns begin to rumble before your sails are turned about. The first volley splits your mainmast, and the second seals your fate. Your captain turns to you with a toothless smile and says, "Aye, Bontemps, y'are been a great mate, and great times we been had." He smiles, tosses you his hat and a thick sack of coin. He nods at the island half a mile to the starboard. "Thar, Admiral, he knows our face, y'are killed his paw. Time for new work, matey." With that, he grins, takes up his rapier and bellows to the crew, "Only the captain dies with the ship, boys. To the seas with ya!" And charges into the wave of Spanish soldiers, pouring over the planks onto the top deck. The clanking of swords and grunts of pain fade behind you as you swim. You quickly drop the bag of coin, which spills gold into the shimmering sea, splaying across the red coral far beneath you in the crystal water. Your strength fails you, and you begin to sink beneath the waves, lungs screaming in pain as the water rushes in. You wake up, coughing, hacking, seizing, just like the day you woke on the beach next to the captain's hat. But as you look down, you're in a makeshift cot in a hotel room, and the phlegm you are coughing up is not seawater. but a black, thick ooze. It has a hint of brine, but tastes of ash. Milo Papi, you and Bantal fought back to back in the battle against the natives, surrounded, outnumbered, and gravely injured. In your heart of hearts, you had accepted your fate, but something scared them, giving you a chance to flee with your friends. You and Bear have dragged Bantal through the forest for hours, fending off wolves, finally making it back to the inn in Rocktown. After making Bantal as comfortable as you could, you yourself fall asleep on a cot. You awake on a forested mountainside, overlooking a sprawling camp of pine buildings built tightly packed together, often sharing the wall of the neighboring building to save wood and space. The place is bustling with miners, and you recognize the insignia on one of their jackets. Though you have never seen this camp before, you recognize the insignia from the Rocktown mine. As you breathe deeply of the crisp mountain air, you notice there is no wind, and yet the pines have begun to sway in an eerie silence. Your balance shifts, and you feel the ground beneath you change, move beneath your feet. Slowly, the mountain begins to rumble, like a low growl at first, then building with an ever-increasing frenzy. The entire mountain begins to sway and quake with buildings crashing into each other. You hear the snap of breaking pines as you steady yourself and look on in horror. You watch in utter disbelief as a gaping crevasse opens on the side of the mountain, puking a cloud of flame. A miner runs towards you in a blind panic, scrambling up the mountainside as the entire camp begins to crumble. You feel yourself tossed into the air as fire consumes the world around you. As you fall to a consuming flame, time slows, and a soft dusting of gray ash precipitates delicately from the cloudy sky. As you feel your skin cracking and your flesh boiling, the camera focuses to a flake of ash fluttering like a leaf on the wind. The last puff of air sweeps it into your mouth, and it lands on your tongue. You wake to the smell of burning cloth and flesh. Your bed and back is on fire. You roll onto the floor to put yourself out, but your skin is scorched, blackened, permanently disfigured. As you regain your senses, you have the overwhelming taste of salt.
Hey everybody, it's Gabe here with my spookiest lighting. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Weird Wild West.